Hi everybody, this video is just an example of how you might use a video in your weekly reflection assignments on your Spark page, your Spark Reflection Journal. I'm not requiring that anybody makes videos, but if you do have the capability, I really recommend that you give it a try. If you have a cell phone, which I'm sure most of you do, if you have a smartphone, it should be rather easy. You just take a video, like a selfie video of yourself talking, and you can upload it to YouTube. If you do, make sure to mark it as unlisted, not private, or you can leave it public if you want to, but I imagine that a lot of you probably don't want like your homework assignments to be on your feed if you have people following you on YouTube or whatever, but just mark it unlisted if you don't want to be public. If you mark it private, then nobody else can see it. I won't be able to see it, so I won't be able to see what you had said. So upload any videos that you might make, mark them as unlisted, and then post them to your Spark page. So for this week, if we're using the example of psychoanalysis, I might talk about my thoughts on psychoanalysis. How maybe when I first started as a counseling student, I thought that psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapy were completely defunct, completely sort of, disproven, not in use anymore, a thing of the past. That was sort of my understanding of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapy. When I first started in my master's program, when I was at the point that you guys are right now. I had these images of like lying on a couch and the analyst saying weird things about how different images that the client might talk about remind them of like sexual things, for instance, that kind of weirds people out. Like, I didn't want to be doing that kind of therapy. That seems weird. It doesn't seem like it would be useful for people's concerns nowadays. And a lot of those ideas of Freud's from that type of psychoanalysis seemed kind of far-fetched, kind of creepy. And so for that reason, I thought that psychoanalysis was pretty much done, over with, not really practiced anymore, and definitely not relevant. However, as I learned more about it in my master's training, mostly in my master's training, I realized that there is a great deal that psychoanalysis offers, that it's not just things like a cigar being a cigar, that sort of thing. It's not all about making weird interpretations about people's dreams. It's not as subjective and out there as I had originally thought. That, in my opinion, my understanding anyway, based on the reading and the study that I've done of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapy, is that it's really, its most useful application in my book anyway is the attention that it pays to transference and to continuously contaminating the present with the past. That's something that Martha Stark says in her book called Working with Resistance. Now, that is a book on object relations, which is sort of a subset of psychoanalysis. It's a specific type of psychodynamically oriented therapy that's all about examining how you bring the different interaction styles that you had with early attachment figures into your present relationships. The therapeutic relationship, friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, all of the above are basically contaminated with your early relationships to your early attachment figures, such as usually your mother or father, or if you had any other very close attachment figures in your upbringing. And so we'll be talking about that in our discussion board. One of our discussion boards anyway is how do we see our present continually contaminated with the past? How are we bringing these old interaction styles into our present relationships? And it's not always as obvious as it might sound. Like, it might be easy to say, like, oh, I fear rejection because my parents rejected me, or something like that. That seems like it might be fairly upfront and easy to identify. But there might be some even more fine, granular level interaction styles and relationship patterns that you might notice that you have with other people in your life. Like, you might notice that when you have a conversation about a certain topic, or if you go a certain amount of time without talking to a certain person in your life, you might notice like sort of a panicky, like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me now? I've got to do something to make sure that this is okay. And that is a really good example of how the past might be contaminating our present, because that might be an echo of an old attachment relationship that you had with a parental figure or an early caregiver in your life. If you had this, panicked feeling like, oh my gosh, what is my parent, what is my mom, what is my stepmom or whoever gonna say or do if I don't fix this problem right away, and things like that. So I could go on, but I just wanted to put this video up there just to show you what it would look like to put a video on your Spark page and the types of things you might talk about. You can keep it fairly conversational, just like I have here. Talk about what your initial impressions were of psychoanalysis, if that's the topic of our week, as it is on this section of my Spark page. Or if we've moved on to behaviorism, you could talk about your early impressions of that. Or maybe you haven't even heard of some of these theories. Like, once we get to reality therapy, that's probably something you have never heard of. I had never heard of it before I'd started my master's program. So you can share that sort of thing. And then you can share a little bit about your learning, like after you've done your readings, after you've viewed like the materials for the class or participated in the discussions on the class, you can share like what you've learned and how you've grown as a counselor in training as a result of your participation in the class. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. So after I click stop on my webcam, I'm going to upload this to YouTube. I'm not going to mark it unlisted because I have a separate Facebook account for my professional life as opposed to my more personal. Did I say Facebook or YouTube? I don't know. You know what I mean. I have two separate YouTube accounts, one for my personal life and one for my professional life, because I don't need to be have you guys seeing all the comments I make about makeup videos, for instance. that's my sillier, more frivolous side that I don't really need students having a part of. But anyway, so I'll put this on my, I think I'd probably call it Dr. Steen or Dr. Molly Steen or something like that on YouTube, and then I'll link it to my Spark page so that you can see what it would look like when you have a video embedded into a Spark page.